Okay, so the first thing we're going to check is we're going to check all our lights. Now, one of the things you have to remember to do every time you're in the driver's seat, put on your seat belt. The other thing, for your lights to work properly, the door has to be closed. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start up the bus. It's a safety start. So the green light's out, it's in neutral. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on our headlights. Now we're going to check our high beams. And then we're going to cancel those. So we're going to turn our right-hand turn indicator. And now we're going to turn our left. Now we're going to put on our four-ways hazard lights. Cancel those. Now we're going to do our overhead ambers and our stop paddle and crossing arm. And we're going to make sure that the lights are working on our stop paddle. So the one thing you need to remember about these new buses is that the marker lights come on with the headlights. In our older buses, it's a separate switch. So now the third-party tester is going to go to the back of the bus and assist us with our back lights. The lights on the back of the bus are the same as the lights on the front, except of course we have our brake lights. So we're going to test our brake lights, make sure they're working. Then we're going to turn our headlights on. That way our tail lights will be on. Remember, that actually puts our marker lights on too. And then again, we're going to do our turn indicators, right, left, our four ways, our overhead ambers, and our reds. Now we're also going to, as we walk around the bus, we're going to make sure that all our clearance lights are working too. And that's all there is to the light system. Okay, so to pre-trip the outside of our bus, the first thing we always have to do is we have to bend over and we have to look for puddles of any sort. We're looking for oil, antifreeze, water, anything that is under our bus, we need to know. Then we're going to go get our hammer. And we're going to start our pre-trip. And what we're going to do is we are going to make sure that everything on the bus is secure. So our mirrors are all secure. Our headlights, if our lights are dirty, make sure you wipe them off. The crossing arm, secure. We want to look at our wipers, make sure they're in good condition. Again, make sure everything's good. Check our mirrors. Good. And we're going to come all the way over here to our stop paddle. Okay, so right here, this is where we check our steering box and our steering linkage. Basically because we can see the steering wheel right here. And if you notice, this is a box. So our steering box, what do we need to know? We need to know that it's secure, it's not missing any nuts, bolts, or cotter keys, and also that it's not leaking power steering fluid. Now let's talk about our linkage. Think about your arm. So from the steering box to the steering wheel, we want to make sure that our arm, our links, our connecting rods are not cracked or worn, that our sockets and our joints are in good condition, and that we're not missing any nuts, bolts, or cotter keys. So now we're going to inspect our front tire. So we're going to check it for inflation. We're going to make sure that it has at least 4/32 of an inch tread, and that in all major grooves, and that it's worn evenly. We're going to look at the sidewall, make sure there's no cuts, cracks, abrasions. We're going to look at the flange, make sure it's not dented or gouged. Make sure the rim is smooth, that it's not cracked, welded. We're going to check every one of the lug nuts, make sure they're all on and secure. No rust trails. We're going to look at the axle seal. We could actually check the amount of grease through the sight gauge, make sure it's not leaking. And then we're going to look at the valve stem, make sure it's straight and that it has a cap on. And also, we cannot use retreads on the front tire. So the next thing we're going to check is we're going to check our suspension, our front suspension. And I refer to it as our SMUSM. It's kind of our university. So what's the first S we're looking at? It would be our spring hangers. We want to make sure our spring hangers are not missing, cracked, they're not broken, and that they haven't shifted. Next is the M. That's the mounts. The mounts are the big bolts that hold our spring hangers. So we want to make sure that they're not cracked and that the bushings are good. The U is our U-bolt. Again, the U-bolt, it cannot be cracked, no bolts missing, and it really does hold the spring leaves in position. Our next S is our shock absorbers. Again, no bolts missing, secure. And our M, our mud flap. And our mud flap needs to be secure, and it has to extend at least past the center of the tire. Okay, so now we're just going to go down the side of the bus. We're inspecting the bus, making sure that everything's secure. We're going to make sure our emergency door is secure. And then right in this area, we're going to do our rear suspension, which surprisingly is exactly the same as our front suspension. So again, we're going to be looking at our spring hangers, making sure that they're not broken, cracked, or missing. They haven't shifted. We're going to inspect our mounts to make sure that they're not broken, the bolts aren't broken, and that the bushings are good. We're going to take a look at our U-bolt, make sure it's not cracked, that the nuts and bolts are good on that. Our shock absorbers, that they're secure, no missing bolts, they're not leaking. We're going to look at our mud flap again. Secure, it extends over the halfway mark of the tire. And in the rear, we have one more thing to look at, and that's our torque arm. And our torque arm is this connecting device right here. And we're just going to make sure that it's not damaged and it's not missing any bolts. And so that's going to bring us to our rear axle. So again, we're going to check our inflation on both tires. They're good. We're going to run our hammer through the center of the tires, making sure that there's nothing in between, no rocks, nothing damaging them. We're going to look at our tread depth. That needs to be 2/32 of an inch in all major grooves, evenly worn. The back can have retreads. We're going to take a look at our sidewalls, making sure that they're smooth, not cracked, no abrasions. We're going to check every one of our lug nuts to make sure that they're all tight, they're all there. We're going to look at our rim. We don't want to see any dents in the rim. We're going to look for rust trails. Our rim cannot be cracked or welded. We're going to look at the axle seal. It's not leaking. Check our valve stem. It's straight. and there's a cap on it, but we also have to find our valve stem on the inside dual. So you need to look through. Oh, there it is, and it's straight, and the cap's on it. Okay, so back in this section of the bus, this is where we talk about our brakes, our hoses, our electrical lines. So as a memory aid to me, I like to break it up into 4 sections. This is our brake chamber, this is our LDS, our hoses and lines, and our electrical lines. So let's go back to the brake chamber. We need to make sure that it's securely mounted, not cracked, broken, not leaking. It doesn't have any oil or grease in it. So then let's go down a step and let's talk about our LDS. That's our brake linings, our drums, and our slack adjuster. Our linings, our brake linings need to be at least a 1/4 inch thick, no signs of wear, and you would never want to see oil or grease on our lines. Our drums, they need to be smooth, no oil or grease in our drums, not scratched. And then our S is our slack adjuster. Our push rod cannot move more than 1 inch with the brakes released. So let's go down now and talk about our hoses. You know, our hoses, we don't want to hear air leaks, and they cannot be cut, cracked, pinched, worn. And then last but not least, our electrical lines. Again, we don't want them bare, broken, rubbing or cracked. We're going to make sure this compartment's secure, check our reflector, and it's time for us to go to the back of the bus. Okay, so our LDS is our linings, our drums, and our slack adjuster. The linings have to be at least a 1/4 inch thick, in good condition, and you never want to see any grease or oil in them. The drums need to be smooth with no grooves, and again, you don't want to see grease and oil in your brake drums. And the S is our slack adjuster. The push rod cannot move more than 1 inch with the brakes released.